When Maya and Mia Turner decided to sign up at Warriors Path Karate Dojo, the sisters knew that being among the very few black students in a mostly white class wouldn't be easy. But they couldn't have imagined what lay ahead. From the very first day, Jake Harrison and Connor Mills, two arrogant black belt students notorious for bullying, were determined to make the 14-year-old twins their newest pastime. The taunts escalated quickly. When Jake sneered, "Even monkeys can mimic people," they'd crossed every line. What Jake and Connor didn't know was that after each humiliating, painful session, the sisters quietly trained in their dad's garage. The bullies thought they were slowly crushing two fragile yellow belt girls. But in reality, they were dead wrong. Before we go on, drop a comment telling us where you're watching this video from. And don't forget to subscribe because you definitely won't want to miss tomorrow's story. That afternoon, warm sunlight spilled across the pavement in front of Warriors Path Karate, the most prestigious dojo in the Millbrook area. Maya and Mia Turner stepped down from their father, David Turner's, dark green pickup, hearts pounding with excitement and nerves. Both had just turned 14 and for the first time were allowed by Dad to pursue the karate they'd always dreamed about. Maya smoothed out her crisp new white gi, her eyes sparkling as she looked up at the proud sign that read, Warriors Path Karate Dojo. Beside her, Mia, the quieter twin, rested a steadying hand on Maya's shoulder, offering the familiar reassurance they always shared when embarking on something new. "Do your best," their father said in a warm but firm tone. David Turner, a strong man who'd served years in the military, had always taught his daughters that courage and determination were the most important things in life. "I'll pick you up in 2 hours. Remember everything I've taught you." "Yes, Dad," Maya replied confidently, squeezing her sister's hand before hurrying inside. As soon as they walked through the doors, Maya and Mia sensed the difference. The spacious training hall, hung with trophies, gold medals, and portraits of famed masters, was almost entirely full of white students, making the two sisters feel strangely alone. Curious and sometimes scrutinizing looks turned toward them almost instantly. "Welcome to Warriors Path," said a voice behind them. They turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 50s wearing a black GI. This was Sensei Robert Mitchell, the dojo's renowned instructor. Though he gave a polite smile, his eyes were sharp and serious enough to make Mia shiver. "We're Maya and Mia Turner," Mia said respectfully, trying to hide her nerves. Sensei Mitchell nodded once, then looked toward the main class in session. "Join the new students over there and begin with the basic stances," he said flatly, emotionless. The twins hurried over. Only a few steps in, they realized how closely they were being watched. Ahead of them stood two taller boys, a few years older, each with a confident black belt tied around his waist. Jake Harrison and Connor Mills, the dojo's standout upper-rank students. Jake leaned toward Connor, speaking loud enough for the sisters to hear. "Look who we have today. 2 special guests." Connor laughed mockingly, eyeing Maya and Mia up and down. "I wonder if they're here to train or if we're hosting a zoo." A ripple of giggles spread through the class. Mia's cheeks burned as she gripped the edge of her GI. Maya, the braver of the two, gave her sister's hand a reassuring tug and whispered firmly, "Don't mind them, Mia. We're here to learn, not to listen to nonsense." But deep down, they both knew this was only the beginning of a much bigger challenge. Jake and Connor's sneers weren't just passing jabs. They'd marked Maya and Mia as their next targets. Their first training session at Warrior's Path felt heavier than they'd anticipated. Every basic move they made drew Jake and Connor's mocking attention, punctuated by derisive laughs from across the hall. Though they tried to stay calm, each glance, each whisper, felt like a punch to the spirit, making it hard to breathe. When class finally ended, the sisters left the dojo without the eager smiles they'd worn that morning. Their dad's pickup was parked out front, and David Turner immediately noticed the sadness and fatigue in their eyes. "What happened, girls?" he asked, concerned. Maya and Mia exchanged glances. Then Maya forced a small smile. "Nothing, Dad. It was just a bit tougher than we expected." David nodded silently, but the seasoned veteran, battle-tested and perceptive, knew something was wrong. He chose to say nothing more for now, waiting until he could learn exactly what had gone on. As the truck pulled away, Maya and Mia glanced back at the dojo, its lights still shining and laughter still echoing inside. They understood clearly that their journey here wouldn't be easy. But armed with the determination their father had instilled in them, the Turner twins resolved not to back down. No matter how rocky the road ahead, Maya and Mia Turner would keep pushing forward. What they didn't know was that today's trials were merely the opening act in a series of grueling tests, both on the mats and within their own hearts, to fight injustice and prejudice with courage and an unbreakable spirit. From their very second practice, Maya and Mia sensed the dojo felt even colder than the early spring chill outside. The excitement of day one gave way to a weary vigilance each time they stepped through the doors of Warrior's Path. Every eye seemed fixed on the sisters, part curiosity, part caution, and many of those looks carried equal measures of distance and disdain. On the training floor, when Sensei Mitchell grouped students by belt rank, Maya and Mia found themselves at the very end of the line with the other beginners, even though the had up a messer a grasp of the basic techniques. Whispers arose again from the nearby black belt circle, led by the towering Jake Harrison with his blonde hair and smirk, and his sidekick, the cold-eyed Connor Mills, who never left Jake's shoulder. "What a joke!" Jake sneered toward Maya and Mia, his voice low enough to evade Sensei Mitchell's ears, but loud enough for nearby students to catch. "I wonder what they'll do today, huh, Connor?" Connor shrugged with a mocking grin. "Just watch how they move, like two baby monkeys trying to mimic humans." A few older students snickered. Eyes downcast, they were busily retying their belts. No one dared speak up. Even though Jake's insult struck at the little newcomer's dignity, Jake pressed on, this time deliberately louder once Sensei's back was turned. "Hey, Maya. Mia, feel like eating bananas instead of practicing today? Maybe you two should try the zoo's workout first?" He taunted, chest puffed out like a victor in a cruel contest. The rest of the class fell silent, heads bowed to the mats, some pretending to adjust their belts, others staring off as if they hadn't heard a thing. The tension was electric. Every minute dragged on endlessly for Maya and Mia. Mia clenched her hand so tightly that her knuckles went white. She glanced at Maya and saw her twin fighting back tears of humiliation and anger. They'd faced prejudice before at school, but the suffocating atmosphere in the dojo and the silent complicity of this small community amplified their pain tenfold. Sensei Mitchell, who ought to have been their ally, seemed utterly oblivious. He focused solely on technical form, occasionally walking past Maya and Mia without once pausing to offer guidance or encouragement. More than once he stood just a few steps from Jake and Connor, plainly within earshot of their nasty jibes, yet only called out generally, "Focus on your technique, no private chatter." His indifference and effectively his tacit approval only emboldened Jake and Connor. They believed their black belts granted them absolute immunity, as if the dojo's rules applied only to outsiders while they stood above them all. The low point of that day came when Sensei Mitchell paired everyone up for reflex drills. Jake positioned himself facing Maya, eyes full of challenge. As they practiced, he subtly twisted her wrist, sending a sharp pain through her arm. "Keep going. Don't tell me you can't handle this already," he whispered just loud enough for her to hear, but too quietly for Sensei to intervene. Connor, meanwhile, shoved Mia's shoulder harder than necessary, nearly sending her crashing to the mat. The days that followed were no better. Each karate class became a veritable battlefield of isolation and intimidation. Bruises multiplied on Maya's arms and legs, and though both twins masked their hurt with stoic faces, their spirits were fracturing, and they never complained to their parents. Yet the cruelest wound wasn't the physical pain, but the helplessness of watching everyone around them, from fellow students to the head instructor, choose silence over standing up for what was right. In a space plastered with banners proclaiming respect, honor, discipline, only Maya and Mia understood that sometimes silence is the keenest weapon of all. That night, their footsteps heavy, Maya and Mia slipped into bed side by side, moonlight slicing through the window. In the quiet, they both realized they would have to learn not only to defend themselves physically, but also to protect their own hearts from prejudice, apathy, and the cold indifference of those around them. And this was only the beginning of a pain that would change their lives forever. The quiet nights at the Turner house hadn't been peaceful for Maya and Mia since they started training at Warrior's Path. Their shared bedroom grew thick with heavy sighs and dark bruises, purple, blue, and red, streaking their small arms, shoulders, and legs. Each morning, Maya tried to hide her marks under long sleeves, while Mia silently covered her scrapes with bandages, always smiling and saying, "It's nothing. I just tripped." To their parents, the girls remained strong, independent, proud to train at the region's top dojo. Whenever David Turner asked, "How was practice today, my two girls?" "It was great, Dad," Sensei said. "We've improved so much." Maya and Mia always answered with the brightest smiles they could muster, hiding the dull ache in their bodies and hearts. But behind those words lay unending mental torture. On the dojo floor, Maya and Mia existed like ghosts in a cold world, both hunted prey and isolated outcasts. Jake and Connor, with their cold stares and arrogant smirks, seized every opportunity to turn practice into public torment. Jake's glances at Maya during a kick or Connor's deliberate leg sweep in a drill were obvious intimidation tactics. One late afternoon session, Sensei Mitchell organized sparring matches among the new yellow belts, Jake coincidentally paired with Maya. When the whistle blew, instead of light exchanges, Jake delivered an overpowered kick to Maya's hip, sending her crashing to the mat. The other students stirred, but Sensei only glanced over and snapped, "Maya, focus! Get up and continue!" Maya winced as she rose, salty sweat mixing with tears. She swallowed back. Jake leaned in and hissed, half mocking, half threatening, Want to be a fighter? You're nowhere near ready." Those words echoed endlessly. Even in the locker room, after class, Maya and Mia heard Connor shout to his friends, "Watch out! If these two monkeys stand together, this place is going to smell like a banana patch." Fear and humiliation built day by day. Yet Maya and Mia never dared tell their parents. Partly to spare Dad worry. Partly because they clung to hope. If we endure long enough, maybe things will change, or Jake and Connor will tire. But while bruises healed, the wounds in their hearts only deepened. Maya and Mia's confidence and joy faded, replaced by dread at the thought of the dojo. Late at night, under the dim bedside lamp, Mia whispered, "Maya, would it be shameful if we quit? I don't know. I'm just afraid of making Mom and Dad sad. Dad's so proud of us." So, the twins gritted their teeth and endured in silence. Each day a trial of body and spirit. David Turner, a man who'd faced bombs and the pains of war, was not so easily deceived. One weekend evening, while cleaning his garage, he saw Mia pull off her sweater, revealing a cluster of bruises on her shoulders. His expression darkened. Memories of wartime horrors flooded back. He'd seen young comrades suffer in silence, and now he saw it in his daughters. He called them into the living room, voice low and serious. "Maya, Mia, is there something you need to tell me? I don't want the usual answer. I've seen too many hide their pain, but I never want my daughters to suffer alone." Maya glanced at Mia. Mia stared at the floor, clutching her shirt. Neither dared speak. In the heavy silence, David sighed and sat down between them, his steady hand on their shoulders, protective and firm. "I'm here whenever you need to talk. You are never alone." That night, for the first time in weeks, Maya and Mia slept deeply. Not because their pain had ended, but because a spark of hope had been lit. Maybe if they found the courage, the twins would no longer have to live in two worlds at once, a brave front for their family and hidden wounds bleeding in their hearts. That night, as Maya and Mia walked in after practice, David Turner immediately sensed something was off. The warm glow of the kitchen light spread across the floor as he leaned against the doorway, quietly watching his daughter's every move. Mia tried to walk normally, but each step seemed tentative, like she was hiding pain in every joint. Her left sleeve had ridden up, exposing fresh bruises on her dusky skin, impossible to conceal even when she hurriedly tugged her sleeve back down. David's brow furrowed. He said nothing, just kept watching until the girl started to head upstairs, then called firmly, Maya, come sit with me for a moment." The living room felt smaller in the heavy silence. Maya sank into a chair, avoiding her father's gaze, while Mia shivered and clasped her own wrist as if to comfort herself. David pulled another chair closer, his eyes serious, but full of concern and love. "I told you before, if anything happens, you tell me first. No hiding, no fear. Tonight, I want the truth." Pressure filled the room. Maya glanced at Mia. They both searched each other's eyes, seeking courage, as they always did together. Mia's voice was barely more than a whisper. "Dad, things at the dojo, they're not what we've been telling you these past weeks." Maya bit her lip. It was time to stop pretending. She straightened her back as if bracing for a storm. "Dad, at the dojo we're being bullied. It's not just hard practice. It's really bad treatment." Each word cracked the strong facade Maya had fought so hard to wear. Mia continued, tears welling in her voice. "Jake and Connor, two black belts there, constantly taunt us, call us monkeys and street kids. and go out of their way to hit harder during sparring. Sometimes they shove me down on purpose, twist my arm until it hurts. Once Jake whispered awful things into my ear. "Dad, we're scared." David's knuckles whitened as he gripped the armrests, fighting to keep his composure. Old memories of the battlefield surged back, where the weak learned to hide their fear to survive. But now his own little girls were enduring that in a place meant to teach respect and protection. He lowered his voice, controlled but edged. "What about Sensei Mitchell? The other students? Didn't anyone help you?" Maya shook her head, tears shining in her eyes. "Sensei Mitchell knows what's happening. He stood right there and pretended not to hear. He only cares about Jake and Connor because they're wealthy. Top students. The others? No one wants to get targeted like us." The air in the room grew heavier. David leaned back, rubbing his temples, voice thick with emotion. "Why did you hide this from me so long?" Mia wiped her eyes, hesitating. "We knew you were proud of how strong we are. We were afraid you'd be disappointed, and we thought if we just endured, things might get better." Those words hit David harder than any shell or bullet he'd faced. He held no anger toward his daughters, only at himself for not seeing the truth sooner. Gently, he pulled them both into his arms. "No one has the right to make you feel small or afraid, especially in a place that should be like a second home. From now on, things will be different." In that moment, a cold resolve settled in David Turner's heart. Justice and dignity could wait no longer. Maya and Mia would no longer suffer in the shadows. Their painful secret was laid bare, and it was time for a father to stand up and protect what mattered most. Wrapped in their father's warm embrace, Maya and Mia felt the shift. They knew that from this night on, the Turner family would no longer be silent. Storms still lay ahead, but this time they would face them together, never alone again. The pain of that night's confession still lingered in Maya and Mia's eyes, but in their father's arms they felt the darkness crack open to reveal a new hope. David Turner, who had endured the fiercest battles and watched comrades fall because they failed to protect one another, would not allow his daughters to remain victims another moment. The very next morning, he set his plan into motion. In the chilly garage behind their house, David cleared everything out, rolled the pickup truck outside, and laid down an old mat. He unpacked a heavy bag, gloves, and wrist wraps, transforming that humble space into a makeshift training room, a safe trench where Maya and Mia would learn to meet their fears head-on with real skills. "Starting today, I'm your coach," he announced, voice firm and eyes burning with uncompromising resolve. "I'm not teaching you how to win a karate tournament. I'm teaching you how to survive like soldiers, like true fighters." At first, the girls were surprised, even a little terrified. They had thought dojo training was tough enough. And now here was their father, all military precision and strict discipline. But in his gaze, they also saw limitless love and an unspoken promise. "I will never let anyone hurt you again." Night after night, as darkness fell over the neighborhood, Maya and Mia would slip out of the house under the guise of doing homework, then sneak down to the garage to begin their secret training. David started them on basic conditioning: push-ups, jump squats, rope climbs, endurance runs around the yard, building not just muscle, but the grit to push through any limit. Once their bodies adapted, he introduced them to the combat tactics he'd used in Afghanistan: low defensive stances, leveraging an opponent's force against them, and delivering quick, powerful strikes to vulnerable targets: the chin, throat, solar plexus, and knees. There were no ceremonial bows or graceful forms, only raw survival instincts and total focus. He taught Maya how to use her speed and reach against stronger adversaries, and showed Mia how to spring back up whenever she hit the ground. Some evenings, David played the bully himself, reenacting the very maneuvers Jake and Connor had used: throws, wrist locks, choke holds, so his daughters could practice countering each one. The garage rang with their labored breaths, the slap of gloves, the occasional grunt or tearful gasp. Every time they stumbled, David would kneel, soothe their bruises, and remind them, "A warrior never gives up. When you fall, you get up faster and stronger. That's how you make fear afraid of you." Gradually, Maya's eyes sharpened with determination. Once guarded and reserved, she learned to channel her anger into every punch and kick, each blow fueled by her wounded pride. Mia shed her timidity, discovering how to move with grace, strike with speed, and outthink any opponent. But it wasn't just their bodies that grew stronger. The bond between father and daughters deepened, too. Between sets, David shared stories from his service, tales of courage, of fighting, not just with fists, but with the heart. He reminded them, "Your greatest strength isn't in your muscles or your moves. It's in your spirit, the unbreakable, will to stand tall no matter what." Night after night, when training ended, the three of them would sit together on the garage step, beneath a sky full of stars, breathing hard but smiling. The bruises faded, replaced by a confident energy that shone in their eyes and in every step they took. No longer did the thought of Jake and Connor or the echo of their mocking laughter make the twins flinch. Their transformation was so subtle that most people didn't notice. At school, Maya and Mia still seemed to be the quiet girls next door. At the dojo, Jake and Connor still assumed their prey were as weak as ever. They had no idea that in the silent refuge of the Turner garage, two little warriors were rising, preparing for the real fight, not just to defend themselves, but to reclaim the respect they were owed. From that moment on, Maya and Mia were no longer victims. In their hearts burned a new fire, one of unwavering determination and a will that refused to bow to any darkness. Since those secret garage workouts with their dad, the change in Maya and Mia has been gradual but unmistakable. Outwardly, they still wore their usual shy demeanors, but inside, they'd forged a layer of mental armor with every drop of sweat and every ache they endured. They no longer trembled stepping into Warrior's path, nor did they bow their heads to avoid Jake and Connor's stares. In the crowded class, Maya and Mia calmly observed everything. Jake's hostile glare, Connor's scornful smirk, the conspiratorial wink they shared whenever Sensei Mitchell looked away, and silently committed each detail to memory. That quiet resolve, even without a single outward protest, unnerved Jake and Connor more than ever. They were used to victims showing fear, even tears on the mat, but Maya and Mia no longer did. Every time they were shoved down, they popped right back up, locking eyes with their aggressors without a word of complaint. When forced into sparring drills and taking hits far harder than necessary, neither flinched nor shrank back, nor gave any sign of weakness. Frustrated, Jake escalated his tactics. During one drill, when Sensei Mitchell had them switch partners for defense practice, Jake accidentally cranked up the force on Maya's arm lock, slamming her to the mat. He leaned in and taunted, "How's that feel, little monkey? Hurt much?" Are you going to cry in front of everyone again? Maya said nothing, but her eyes were not the fearful ones Jake expected. They were icy and composed, and for a moment, he froze. Likewise, in sessions with Connor, Mia no longer fell for surprise sweeps or knee hooks. Even when he knocked her down, she sprang up instantly, ready and unblinking in his face. Connor, who thrived on domination, grew increasingly impatient. One day he unleashed a brutally hard strike, but instead of crying, Mia exhaled sharply, retrieved her glove, and stood her ground, turning the air between them electric. After every class, Jake and Connor huddled together, plotting how to break through the twins' new armor. The more they witnessed Maya and Mia's resilience, the more threatened they felt. The dojo's self-appointed kings watched their control slip away and their pride crack. To the other students, Maya and Mia's silence no longer read as fear, but as something to be respected. A few of the newer faces, especially those who'd once been bullied by Jake and Connor, quietly admired how the sisters rose without complaint or showboating, yet never sacrificed their dignity. Only Sensei Mitchell continued to look the other way. Whenever a scuffle erupted, he'd glance and then walk off, sometimes even offering the black belts a cold smile, as if their cruelty were just part of discipline. But anyone paying close attention could see it. In Maya and Mia's eyes, there was no resignation. On nights when they stayed late and waited outside the dojo under the yellow lights for their father, they exchanged steely glances, silently reminding each other that what played out on the mat was just the beginning. Inside them lay an arsenal of hidden weapons, calm focus, combat reflexes, defensive skill, all honed each night in the Turner garage. Yet the twins kept their secret. They never unleash their full force or showcase their new skills, always pretending to be the modest yellow belts, letting Jake and Connor believe they still had the upper hand. Fresh bruises were hidden under long sleeves, and they greeted instructors and classmates with polite smiles. But beneath that calm exterior, two little warriors were preparing for the moment they would not only defend themselves, but seize justice and overturn the cruelty that had ruled Warrior's Path for far too long. And it seemed the first sparks of that true battle were already flickering, just waiting for a small spark to ignite a wave that would wash away every prejudice and cruelty reigning in the dojo. The silence of Maya and Mia, and their unshakable resolve in the face of every psychological and physical assault, had stretched the tension in Warrior's Path to a snapping point. Yet no one suspected that beneath their calm exterior, the two girls were quietly preparing for an unforeseen turning point. One late weekend afternoon, a bright new poster went up on the dojo's bulletin board. Citywide open martial arts tournament, all belts, all ages. It listed every division, most prominently the open division, where any student, regardless of rank, could face off, even against seasoned black belts. The news spread like wildfire among the students, especially those who'd long seen Jake and Connor as untouchable kings of the dojo. Everyone assumed the open division was for true masters. Jake and Connor's chance to cement their crowns, not a beginner's dare. But at the very first registration session, Maya and Mia shattered their usual silence. Facing their classmates and even Sensei Mitchell, the sisters strode to the sign-up table and wrote their names under open division without a flicker of hesitation. The dojo fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in whispers, giggles, and wide-eyed disbelief. Jake Lurking nearby, couldn't resist. What's this? Our little yellow belts want to mix it up with the grown-ups? Did you pick the wrong division? Connor laughed and tapped Maya's pen mockingly. Open division is for people who actually know how to fight. This isn't a comedy show, right, Jake? Veteran students chimed in with their own taunts. Guess they want to be the town's laughingstock. Hope they've got a medic on standby. Someone's going to need stitches. Even Sensei Mitchell frowned at the roster, then turned to the twins with a mix of confusion and contempt. Are you sure you don't have the wrong slot? Open division isn't the same as training here in the dojo? Maya looked up steadily. We're not mistaken, Sensei. We want to test ourselves. Win or lose, we need to know how far we can really go. Mia squeezed her sister's hand, throat tight but unwavering. The dojo lights cast their faces in stark relief. Two young women's fierce, burning confidence against a sea of doubtful, mocking gazes. To everyone else, it seemed like youthful folly or pitiable naivete. But for Maya and Mia, it was a silent declaration of war, the first step toward reclaiming the respect, honor, and justice that had been stolen from them. That very evening, in the locker room, Jake strutted past them and hissed low enough for only the twins to hear. Get ready to embarrass yourselves in front of the whole city. Taking my hits on that big stage should be a real show, huh? Connor slapped Jake's shoulder, smirking. Trust me, Jake, they'll leave more of a mess than just banana peels on the mat. This time, Maya and Mia only smiled. No hesitation, no fear, just a strange, steely determination. Their bullies' provocations could no longer touch the fire blazing in their hearts. Instead, every insult and mocking laugh only fueled their resolve. From that night on, the twins doubled their secret training with their father. David knew the moment had come. He taught them not just technique, but how to stand tall under pressure, how to steady their breathing, read an opponent, stay calm under taunts, and never lose faith in themselves. To Jake and Connor, the tournament was another chance to reinforce their power, to publicly humiliate the last challengers they still controlled. To Maya and Mia, it was the arena where every hidden pain, every sleepless night, every drop of sweat would be laid bare, and where they would prove once and for all that true strength doesn't come from belt color or the bully's laughter, but from a heart that refuses to yield to injustice. Days of tense, excited anticipation passed. On the surface, Warrior's Path seemed its usual calm, but underneath a storm was gathering, and no one realized that the two youngest, most underestimated fighters were about to become its eye, ready to sweep away every ounce of false pride on that tournament floor. The atmosphere inside Millbrook's downtown arena that afternoon was nothing like a typical tournament. Hundreds of spectators packed the stands. Parents, students, curious locals, all had come to witness the region's biggest martial arts event of the year. Colorful banners bearing the logos of major dojos hung everywhere, while chants and drum beats rolled through the air like crashing waves. In one corner of the crowd, Maya and Mia stood silently beside their father, two small blades of grass awaiting the storm. Yet their eyes burned with unshakable resolve. On the mat, Jake and Connor strode out with supreme confidence. Their black belts gleamed against white GIs, and their smug smirks stayed firmly in place. Every step they took was cheered by the Warrior's Path faithful, while most of the audience watched skeptically. No one really believed these tiny yellow belts. Newcomers, who'd only trained for a few months, had any chance. Snickers and biting comments rippled through the seats. They're just here for a show, right? Better have an ambulance ready for those girls. But Maya and Mia paid no mind. Over the past weeks, every ounce of fear and self-doubt had been hammered into steely courage in their home garage. Outside the ring, their father, David, clenched his fists, his gaze never leaving his daughters, brimming with a father's unwavering faith. When the organizers announced the first match, Maya Turner versus Connor Mills, the stands erupted in chatter. Connor bounded onto the mat, eyes blazing, and leaned close to Maya, hissing, "Get ready to embarrass yourself in front of the whole city, little monkey!" Maya offered no reply. She bowed to the referee, then stepped into her stance with complete calm. The bell rang, and Connor lunged immediately, certain he would knock her out in seconds. But just moments later, the truth struck like lightning. Maya slipped aside, using the escape move her father taught her to redirect Connor's kick, then spun and delivered a perfectly placed strike to his rib. Off balance and stunned, Connor barely registered the follow-up sweep before he crashed to the mat. The crowd blinked in disbelief. Connor, the dojo's black belt king, had fallen in under 15 seconds. The arena went silent. Before the referee could even call the point, Maya had already shifted back into her defensive guard, eyes ice-cold as she watched Connor struggle beneath her. Then the stands exploded. Gasps followed by wild applause, while Warriors Path members stared at one another speechless. Next up was Mia Turner versus Jake Harrison. Jake stormed onto the mat, fury on his face after seeing his partner's swift defeat. He snarled at Mia, "Too bad for you, I'm not as weak as Connor. I'll show you real humiliation." Mia didn't respond. She bowed, assumed her guard, and waited. The bell rang, and Jake unleashed a flurry of vicious kicks and hooks, but Mia danced through each attack, maintaining perfect distance. As Jake shifted weight mid-combo, she seized the opening, firing a 3-strike counter, a straight punch to the stomach, a low kick to the knee, and then a spinning elbow to his chest. Jake crumpled, winded and stunned, utterly humiliated. The match was over in 20 seconds, and the arena erupted like a thunderclap. Doubtful whispers turned to shouts of amazement. The old taunts fell silent, replaced by cheers and hoots of excitement. "Unbelievable! Those were yellow belts!" rang out from every section. In the stands, Sensei Mitchell was frozen. He'd never expected the very students he and the dojo had dismissed to topple Warriors Path's brightest stars. On the mats, Jake and Connor lay defeated, not just in body, but in pride and honor. David Turner watched his daughters amid the roaring applause, pride choking him. Maya and Mia hadn't just reclaimed their own dignity. They had struck a devastating blow against the prejudice and injustice that had shadowed Warriors Path for so long. Yet Maya and Mia knew this was only the beginning of a real storm. The true test of strength and pride was only just starting right there on that mat. The cheers of admiration still rang through the arena, while back at the Warriors' Path corner, shame and shock hung heavy in the air. Jake and Connor sat frozen on the mat, unwilling or unable to rise after being publicly humiliated before hundreds of onlookers. Two dojo kings finally bested beyond question by the very girls they'd scorned. Friends, instructors, and parents all stared at the defeated pair with a mix of disbelief, embarrassment, and disappointment. But for Jake and Connor, that humiliation swiftly curdled into blind rage. Their pride, built on mocking and belittling others, lay in ruins before the crowd. Irreparable. The moment the referee declared the results, both staggered off the mat, eyes bloodshot, jaws clenched. From the stands came boos and restless whispers, fanning the flames of wounded ego burning inside them. As Maya and Mia turned to leave the competition area, Jake threw decorum aside. He lunged behind Maya and drove a savage hook into her shoulder amid the jostling crowd. Connor followed, slamming a fierce elbow into Mia's ribs, heedless of rules or witnesses. In seconds, the audience barely understood what was happening before the two girls were embroiled in a full-blown brawl on the mat. Screams erupted from the front rows, and judges and referees rushed in to pull the combatants apart. But chaos reigned like a raging storm. Some Warriors Path students, rather than stepping in, seemed mesmerized by the sudden violence. Jake and Connor's fury had transcended the bounds of sport, morphing into brazen public revenge where every restraint and rule lay shattered. What happened next stunned the entire arena. No longer the helpless little girls, Maya and Mia instantly switched to combat-ready defense. Those real-world techniques their father had drilled into them in the garage burst to life. When Jake shoved Maya, she blocked his strike, spun, grabbed his wrist, and used his momentum to flip him raw onto the mat in front of everyone's jaw dropping. Connor, thinking he'd terrify Mia, mistimed his elbow. Mia slipped behind him, locked his arm, and swept his legs out from under him, sending him sprawling across the canvas. Then, in a flash, she knelt into a pin, pressing her knee into his back, holding him immobilized until referees and security could intervene. Jake lunged again, fury blazing, but Maya met him head-on. She evaded his grab, countered with a precise block, sweeping kick, spinning shoulder strike, and finally a simple but devastating chokehold. He thrashed in desperate defeat as the crowd watched, breathless. In under 60 seconds, the self-styled dojo overlords lay vanquished in front of hundreds of witnesses, cameras rolling, lights blazing. Gone was any trace of glory. Jake and Connor gasped for air, broken in body, pride, and spirit, tasting true fear for the first time. The spectators stood in stunned silence, half in panic, half electrified by what they'd seen. Officials halted the melee, security hauled the two instigators off the mat, and amid the clang of protests, they cheated, they played dirty. Richard Harrison, Jake's father, and Bill Mills, Connor's dad, accused. Order slowly returned. From his vantage point in the stands, David Turner gripped the railing, pride and resolve shining in his eyes. He knew that what his daughters had done today was more than self-defense. It was a silent message to everyone who had tolerated, ignored, or enabled their torment. Maya and Mia, in that moment, not only beat their bullies, but awakened an entire community to the power of courage and the necessity of resistance when justice is trampled. As the PA system called for order, Maya and Mia stood firm in the center of the mat, breathing heavily, their eyes blazing with a pride like never before. They had dared to confront injustice in the very place that once terrified them. And now no one in that arena could ever look at them with contempt again, not even those who once claimed absolute power over the dojo floor. Just as order was being restored on the mat, while Maya and Mia were still recovering from their fierce self-defense, a new wave of outrage erupted. This time, from the grown-ups who'd long assumed that money, status, and family name would shield their kids no matter how badly they behaved. Richard Harrison, Jake's father, strode down from the VIP section to the competition area, face flushed with fury, eyes blazing. Bill Mills, Connor's dad, followed at his side, finger pointed accusatorily at Maya and Mia. Gone were their usual airs of calm prestige. In their place were scowls and snarled voices, their shame at seeing their superior children humbled turning to raw rage.